I lied to everyone and to myself first of all. I lived in luxury, but I was afraid to look in the mirror. When the money disappeared, so did the glitter, only I was left. And for the first time that was enough. My name is Vanessa, and I used to stare at the dust dancing in the sunlight through my bedroom window, wondering how something so small could still shimmer. I grew up in a Texas town you've never heard of, where the best restaurant was a Dairy Queen and girls were expected to marry by 22. The streets smelled like motor oil and Friday night bonfires. Everyone knew everyone. And worse, everyone expected the same things from life. A decent man. A modest house. Kids who grow up and repeat the cycle. But I had different dreams. Not just bigger, shinier. Flashbulb shiny. By 16, I was already cutting photos out of fashion magazines and taping them above my bed like some girls taped Bible verses. Penthouses. Red carpet gowns. A diamond the size of a grape. Not love stories, wealth stories. I'd close my eyes at night and picture myself stepping out of a black car in heels so high they made me bleed. Paparazzi screaming my name. A man in a $1,000 suit holding my hand like I was the prize, not the accessory. I wasn't pretty in the way small towns liked. I was sharp. My cheekbones were high, my laugh too loud, my thighs too bold for church dresses. But I learned how to soften. I studied faces, copied smiles. By 19 I could turn heads with a glance. Not because I was beautiful, but because I knew how to make a man feel like the richest man in the room, even if he wasn't. Yet, I knew I couldn't stay. That kind of ambition is dangerous in a town like mine. It makes people uncomfortable. Like you're calling them out just by wanting more. So the day after my 21st birthday, I boarded a one-way flight to Los Angeles with 2 suitcases, 1 fake designer purse, and a dream that sparkled like broken glass in the sun. I wasn't scared. I was ready. First it was a blur. Couchsurfing with a friend of a friend. Hustling for hostess gigs in restaurants where the tips were as important as the clientele. I studied women in Beverly Hills the way surgeons study anatomy. How they moved, how they laughed. How they flirted without seeming desperate. I learned to layer my lies with charm, saying I was just in between internships, or working on a screenplay. In truth, I was barely holding it together. But I looked the part. My first taste of the life I wanted came at a brunch in West Hollywood. I wasn't invited, I snuck in on the arm of a guy I'd met on an app. He was nothing. A stepping stone. But the people in that room, they were something. You could smell the wealth. Clean, cold, and slightly citrus. Like new money mixed with old arrogance. Men who didn't ask what you did, just how far you'd go. That's when I realized, I didn't need to be rich. I just needed to be chosen. I got better at the game. I changed my name on dating apps to Nessa. Because it sounded more expensive. I started telling people I was from Miami, not Midland. I bought clothes I couldn't afford and returned them after dates. I dated a tech CEO who brought me to Napa in his private jet. I laughed at jokes I didn't understand. I slept in sheets that cost more than my rent back home. And for a moment I thought, this is it. I'm getting close. But every man treated me the same way, like I was a temporary upgrade. Pretty thing to parade around. I told myself it was worth it. That love was optional as long as the zip code was right. Until I met him. His name was Ethan. And he didn't ask me where I was from or what I wanted. He just said, "You look like trouble." The good kind. Ethan walked into my life like he owned the air. It was a rooftop party in downtown LA. One of those hush-hush events with no address. Just coordinates texted an hour before. The kind of party where everyone pretends not to notice the celebrity in the corner. Where the champagne flows like water, and no one eats the food. I was wearing a silk dress I couldn't afford, my hair in loose waves that took me 3 YouTube tutorials to get right. I remember being cold, tipsy, and almost ready to leave when I saw him. He wasn't like the others. Not younger, not flashier. He looked rooted. Like a man who didn't have to prove he was rich. Salt and pepper hair, sharp jawline, black on black suit that whispered custom. He had a presence that made people clear a path without knowing they had. And somehow he stopped in front of me. "You don't belong here," he said, smirking. I stiffened, already halfway to some flirty comeback, but before I could speak he added, "You're too interesting. Everyone else here's trying to be seen. You look like you're watching." I laughed, more out of surprise than charm. "Maybe I am. I like trouble," he said. his eyes scanning me like a puzzle he wanted to solve. And you look like the good kind. That was it. No cheesy pickup line. No questions about my brand or follower count. Just a man who saw through the glitter and liked what he saw anyway. By the end of the night, I was in the back seat of his car, curled against buttery leather, drunk on his cologne and the promise of something different. He didn't touch me, not really. Just held my hand, fingers grazing my knuckles like we'd known each other in another life. It was oddly intimate. Powerful. Like he didn't need to own me to make me feel owned. Over the next few weeks, Ethan consumed my world. He sent flowers to the apartment I shared with two girls who thought I was just lucky. He picked me up in a black Tesla with no destination, just a casual, let's disappear for a while. Sometimes we went to Malibu, sometimes Palm Springs. One night, he flew me to Paris. For dinner. No overnight. No clothes packed. Just me, a passport, and a sleeveless black dress he had delivered that morning. The thing is, I didn't feel like a gold digger. I felt like a movie star. Like I was finally starring in the life I'd storyboarded in my dreams. Ethan was thoughtful, attentive, always listening even when I didn't realize I was saying something worth hearing. He asked about my childhood. My mother. My first heartbreak. No man had ever looked at me and wanted to know what broke me. He bought me a diamond bracelet after a week. A Cartier love ring by week 3. The Tesla was mine by the end of month 2. And yes, the nights were electric. He touched me like I was fragile and fireproof all at once. Like he owned every inch of my skin but had signed a treaty with my soul. We'd lie tangled in white sheets and talk about everything and nothing, his ex-wife, my fake modeling job, what the moon looked like in Tokyo. I felt both invisible and completely seen. But somewhere between the expensive gifts and whispered late-night promises, I started to feel watched. Not by him, by the life I was building. The mirrors in his penthouse reflected a girl I didn't recognize. Hair always perfect. Lips always glossed. Smile just shy of real. I laughed quieter. Posted less. I didn't say dumb jokes anymore. I wasn't allowed to be messy. Because messy wasn't elegant. Messy didn't belong in a mansion overlooking Sunset Boulevard. One night, while he was asleep beside me, I crept into the bathroom and stared at myself in the mirror. The diamond earrings felt heavy. My face too flawless. I took off everything, jewelry, makeup, the silk robe, and stood there, just me. Just Vanessa from nowhere, Texas. And for the first time in months I whispered to myself. Who are you becoming? I told myself I was just being dramatic. Everyone sacrifices a little something for the life they want, right? The right man, the right address, the right story, it all came with a price. And I had already paid in loneliness, hunger, and pretending not to care when men scrolled through their phones on dates. So what if I had to be a little quieter now, a little smaller? But over time, the glitter started to feel like dust. Ethan didn't demand things outright. He wasn't controlling in the usual sense. It was subtle, like velvet handcuffs. If I wore something too revealing, he'd raise an eyebrow and say, that dress again? If I posted a photo where I smiled too wide, too Texas, he'd text, you're more mysterious when you don't show too much. He never said I couldn't go out with friends. He just made me feel like I didn't need to. And honestly, most of them had stopped calling. I was the girl who flew to Paris for dinner. I wasn't one of them anymore. My world shrank. From a skyline of possibility to a penthouse in the clouds. I started keeping secrets. Little ones. Like sneaking a peanut butter sandwich in the middle of the night because I miss real food. Like calling my sister on the bathroom floor with the shower running, just to hear a voice that didn't speak in whispers. Like dancing in the mirror when I was home alone, hair wild, music blasting, just to remember I had a body and not just a frame. And then the money started to flicker. It wasn't obvious at first. Just canceled plans. A tense phone call here, a missed meeting there. The Paris trip stopped. The gifts slowed. He started drinking more, not heavily but nervously. I watched him pace across that marble floor like a man walking a tightrope in the dark. One night, I found him sitting in the living room, the lights off, staring at nothing. He didn't hear me come in. Ethan? I asked softly. He looked up, and his face a god, I'll never forget it. That calm, steel gaze I used to worship was cracked wide open. Everything's gone, he said. I thought he meant metaphorically. A bad day. A rough patch. But no. It was literal. Lawsuits. Fraud allegations. Market crashes. One domino had tipped, and the rest had fallen in record time. The empire he'd built for decades had vanished in less than a month. His name, once whispered like a god's, was now splashed across headlines with words like scandal and collapse. I remember standing there, barefoot on marble, thinking, this is it. The exit ramp. I could leave. No more pretending. No more caged laughter or silent dinners. I could find another rich man, one who hadn't fallen. But I didn't. I walked over to him, knelt beside the couch, and took his hand. What do you need? I asked. He stared at me like I just offered him the sun. Why are you still here? I wanted to say something poetic, something wise. But all I said was, because you're not the money. You're the man I loved falling asleep next to. It was the first time I said loved. And I wasn't even sure if it was true. But that night, for the first time, we were equals. No gloss, no gold. Just two people in the ruins of a life neither of us fully understood. We sold the Tesla. The penthouse lease expired. The Cartier bracelet stayed in a box at the back of my closet. I moved with him into a modest condo near Culver City. I took a job at a boutique down the street to help with rent. It wasn't glamorous. There were no brunches, no silk robes, no eyes watching me in envy. But in that tiny apartment, Ethan started to talk again. Really talk. Not the curated charm of a billionaire, but the raw honesty of a man who'd lost everything and was finally free to feel it. And I started to breathe again. But breathing doesn't mean you're not suffocating. Not always. There's something brutally honest about a cheap apartment. The walls are too thin, the lights too harsh, and there's nowhere to hide. Not behind money, not behind status, not even behind yourself. I thought maybe without the noise of wealth I'd finally hear peace. Instead, I heard everything else. Ethan's sighs in the dark. The hum of the fridge. My own heart asking questions I wasn't ready to answer. We were surviving but barely. Ethan was trying to start over, talking about consulting, maybe teaching. He was a man used to commanding boardrooms, now standing in line at the DMV like everyone else. The fall had humbled him, and in some ways that made him more beautiful. But not to me. Not in the way I thought it would. We became roommates with history. Lovers turned survivors. I'd lie awake next to him at night, staring at the ceiling, thinking, is this love? Or just guilt dressed in loyalty? During the day, I worked retail at a boutique in Venice, selling overpriced linen to women who reminded me of who I used to pretend to be. They'd walk in with iced lattes and sunglasses, humming with entitlement. I smiled, sized them, and told them they looked radiant, all while imagining grabbing them by the shoulders and whispering, it's not real. None of this is real. Don't let it own you. After work, I'd walk the boardwalk alone, earbuds in but no music playing. I watched people, real people, skateboarding, selling paintings, laughing with sand still clinging to their legs. They were messy, loud, free. I envied them. One night, I found myself sitting on a bench near the ocean, watching the sun turn orange as it sank behind the waves. And for the first time in years, I let myself cry. Not cute cinematic tears. Ugly ones. The kind that don't ask permission. I cried for the girl who wanted to be chosen. For the men who used me like a resume trophy. For the life I built on borrowed glitter. And most of all, I cried because I didn't know what I wanted anymore. Ethan was trying. He really was. He started cooking badly, adorably. He brought home flowers from the corner shop, wrapped in newspaper instead of velvet. He told me I was his constant, his compass, his only real thing. And I believed him. But it wasn't enough. Because somewhere along the way I had started dreaming again. Not of diamonds or penthouses, but of myself. Of waking up and not needing a man to validate me. Of creating something, owning something. Not a story I'd rehearsed, but a truth I'd carved with my own hands. I started saving. Secretly, quietly. Every tip, every birthday card, every cashback rebate. I stashed it in a jewelry box under my socks. Not to run away, but to build something of my own. I didn't even know what yet. Just that it had to be mine. Ethan noticed the change before I even said a word. You're drifting, he said one night, as we sat on the balcony with paper cups of boxed wine. I nodded. I think I'm waking up. He didn't fight it. That's what gutted me most. He just looked at me with tired eyes and said, I knew you weren't mine to keep. There was no dramatic breakup. No slammed doors. Just a slow release, like exhaling after holding your breath too long. I moved out a month later. We hugged goodbye. No tears. Just warmth. He kissed my forehead and whispered, thank you for staying when I didn't deserve you. And I walked away, not to another man or another life, but to my life. Scared. Excited. Unpolished. But finally free. Freedom didn't look the way I thought it would. There was no movie montage. No empowering playlist. Just me standing in a sublet studio apartment in Koreatown, surrounded by cardboard boxes, wondering how the hell I got there, and what the hell I was supposed to do next. The walls were yellowed. The plumbing moaned like it resented my presence. But the rent was cheap, the landlord didn't ask questions, and for the first time in years, the space around me felt like mine. No silent rules. No curated aesthetics. Just blank space and potential. I bought my first piece of furniture off Facebook Marketplace, a chipped wooden desk with someone's initials carved into the corner. I sanded it down myself, stained it, and sat there every night trying to remember what I liked before my life became performance art. I made lists in a dollar store notebook. What am I good at? What do I love, not what looks good on Instagram? What do I never want again? Some answers came easy. I loved writing, always had. Back in school, I'd pin pages of stories I never showed anyone, tales of girls with too much hunger and not enough time. I'd buried that part of myself under gloss and filters, but she was still there, waiting. So I started a blog. Anonymously. Just a free WordPress template and late-night rants. I called it The Velvet Hustle. I didn't filter the truth. I wrote about pretending to be someone else, about dating for dollars, about the loneliness of being seen but not known. I thought maybe 3 people would read it. But 3 turned into 30. Then 300. Then viral. Women messaged me from all over the world. Models, students, single moms, even trophy wives in golden cages. They said, "You said what I've never been brave enough to admit." They didn't judge me. They thanked me. They saw me. And slowly I started to see myself. I got freelance offers, copywriting, social media strategy, brand storytelling. I was good at creating illusions after all. But now I use that skill to help others tell their truths. I wasn't rich, not even close. But every dollar came from something I did. Every invoice paid was proof I didn't need a man to fund my existence. Still, I'd be lying if I said the old hunger didn't return sometimes. I'd walk past the Beverly Hills boutiques and feel my mouth water at the window displays. I'd see couples at rooftop bars, he in a Tom Ford suit, she in a backless dress, and feel a twitch in my chest. Not envy. Not anymore. Just memory. But I had my own rituals now. I bought myself fresh flowers every Friday, even if it meant skipping Starbucks. I lit candles and danced barefoot while cooking boxed mac and cheese. I wore the same designer heels from the Ethan days, but this time I wore them for me. One afternoon, I saw Ethan again. It had been almost a year. I was walking through a bookstore in Silver Lake, one of those hidden gems with creaky floors and handwritten shelf notes, when I saw him by the travel section. He looked smaller. Not physically. Just humbled. Softer. He was holding a book on Portugal and smiling at a little girl tugging at her mother's coat. He hadn't seen me. I almost walked away. But I didn't. "Ethan?" I said gently. He turned, and when he saw me, his whole face changed. Not with shock. With warmth. Like a ghost he was happy to see. We talked for 10 minutes. Small things. No apologies, no what-ifs. He told me he was consulting now, finally teaching like he'd wanted. He had found peace. He looked at me and said, "You look more like yourself than I've ever seen you." And I did. Not glamorous. Not flawless. Just me, hair messy, notebook in my tote bag, ink on my fingers. I smiled. I feel like her too. We hugged. And as I walked out of the store, I realized something simple and true. I didn't regret a single thing. Not the lies. Not the heartbreak. Not the cage. Because every glittering, broken piece had brought me here. To this version of Vanessa. Still dreaming. Still messy. But finally real. Success didn't come in a single moment. It came like the tide, subtle, rising, then suddenly undeniable. One morning I woke up to an email from a major online magazine. The subject line read, "We love your voice. Would you write for us?" I thought it was a scam. I reread it 5 times. But it was real. They wanted a column, monthly, raw, unfiltered, everything the Velvet Hustle had become known for. They said I had a rare honesty that cuts through the noise. I stared at my laptop and let that sentence soak in. A rare honesty. That used to be the one thing I thought I had to hide. That week, I walked down to my favorite corner coffee shop, the one with chipped mugs and the barista who called me Queen V. I ordered an overpriced chai and sat by the window, watching traffic crawl past while writing my first column. I titled it, "What Happens After the Fairy Tale Fades?" And when it was published, when the comments flooded in from readers who saw themselves in every paragraph, I felt something I hadn't in a long time. Pride. Not the fragile kind that depends on someone else's approval. Not the hollow kind that sparkles on the outside and crumbles inside. But the kind that grows roots. By month 3, I was being asked to speak on podcasts, guest write for feminist platforms, even give a TEDx talk. Me, the girl who once spent her nights memorizing the wine lists of men she was trying to seduce. At first, I felt like a fraud. I'd stare at my reflection before interviews and whisper, "Don't mess this up. Don't let them see the girl behind the girl." But eventually I stopped hiding her. The girl who once believed her value lived in her body. The girl who tried to become what every rich man wanted, only to realize none of them ever asked what she wanted. And now I tell her story. I launched my own content agency, small but growing. I mentor younger women breaking into writing and branding. I pay my rent on time. I own a velvet couch that I bought secondhand but reupholstered myself. It's deep green and soft, and I sit on it every night with a glass of wine, feet tucked under me, laptop balanced just so. I still have the bracelet Ethan gave me. I don't wear it. But I don't throw it away either. It sits in a little ceramic bowl near my window, next to a dried rose and a Polaroid of me from the night I moved into this apartment. Not as a trophy. As a reminder that you can survive your own reinvention. Sometimes men still approach me with that glint in their eyes, the kind that says, "I could change your life." I smile now, not with interest but with knowledge. Because I know, no one changes my life but me. That doesn't mean I've closed the door on love. I'm still a romantic at heart, though you'd never guess it. I believe in long glances and quiet Sundays, in laughter that bubbles up unexpectedly and hands that reach for yours with no agenda. But I've learned that love without freedom is just another kind of prison. The last date I went on was with a man named Caleb. He's a photographer, scruffy, kind, talks about light like it's a religion. On our second date, I told him about Ethan. About the whole story. The glitz, the fall, the rebuilding. He didn't flinch. He said, "You must be made of steel wrapped in silk." And for once I believed it. We're not serious. Maybe we never will be. But when he looks at me, he doesn't see an accessory. He sees the woman I built. From scratch. From ash. From truth. And that's worth more than any penthouse. I used to think Arrival looked like glass towers and red carpets. Like having my name on a list at a club where people waited just to get a glimpse of the life I was pretending to live. But now Arrival looks different. It's me, barefoot on my little balcony, sipping burnt coffee, watching the sun melt over a city I used to be afraid would swallow me. It's a spreadsheet open on my laptop, invoices sent, deadlines tracked. It's the soft ding of an email from a woman in Brazil telling me that my words made her leave a man who never saw her. I didn't marry a rich man. I didn't even marry at all. But I made a life so rich in purpose I sometimes have to remind myself that I built it from nothing. That girl from the nowhere town in Texas, who used to rehearse her laugh and bite her cheeks to make them look hollow, is gone. She didn't vanish. She grew. She peeled off every layer of herself until she found the skin that felt like home. I still wear designer heels sometimes. I love the sound they make when I walk across a hardwood floor, the little click that says I'm here, and I don't need permission. But the difference now? I bought them. Every scuff on the sole belongs to me. Not a man. Not a fantasy. Sometimes I miss the rush of the old life. The silk sheets, the secret parties, the illusion of being wanted. But I remind myself it wasn't me they wanted. It was a version of me I sold because I didn't know I was worth more than my packaging. Ethan and I haven't spoken in a long time. Last I heard, he was back on his feet. Not billionaire status, but comfortable. Someone told me he's dating a yoga instructor who lives in Topanga Canyon. I hope she makes him laugh. I hope he lets her be loud. There's a quiet power in not needing closure. In just living. Moving on. Not because it didn't mean something, but because I'm no longer anchored to that chapter. It was real. It mattered. And it passed. And Caleb? We still see each other. He took a photo of me last week, me sitting on the green velvet couch, one leg tucked under the other, hair up, fingers mid-sentence on the keyboard. No makeup, no posing. When he showed it to me, I almost cried. Because in that photo, I looked whole. Not perfect. Not polished. Just mine. People sometimes ask me how I got here. They expect a checklist. A 10-step plan to reinvention. But the truth is simpler and harder. I stopped trying to be chosen. I stopped chasing rooms that didn't want the real me inside them. I stopped mistaking comfort for safety and diamonds for devotion. And in the quiet, in the aftermath, I found a different kind of dream. One that doesn't glitter but glows. One that doesn't require sacrifice of self, only the courage to meet it fully as you are. So if you're reading this and you're still pretending, still playing a role you think the world wants from you, I see you. I know the ache. I know the hunger. But you are not a handbag with a pulse. You are not a decoration. You are not a plot twist in someone else's success story. You are the story. And I promise you, when you start living like it, the life that comes next will be terrifying, unglamorous, and so beautifully, unmistakably yours.